I call the Shadow Minister, Richard Fuller.
Many thanks, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement and providing early sight of it. Our ability to invest in public infrastructure is a positive for individuals, for communities and for the country as a whole, and it is right that the new government sets out its strategy. The last government had to deal with a series of economic disruptions, including the impact of COVID, the unwinding of quantitative easing across all advanced economies, and the consequence of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. The global impact of these were to disrupt supply chains, increase inflation and raise interest rates. Notwithstanding these shocks, under the last government, public sector expenditure on capital increased in real terms from £81.7 billion in 2019-20 to £117.8 billion in 24-25, a 44% increase. Today, the Chief Secretary has confirmed expenditure of £725 billion, but provided very little detail. There is no project pipeline today, but will he commit to coming back to this House when it is published? In 2024, the last infrastructure pipeline analysis included an investment pipeline of 660 projects over a 10-year period commencing from 24-25. The Chief Secretary's last statement to the House was in very large part a restatement of the investments in local transport in projects that had already been announced by the previous Conservative government. So can the Chief Secretary confirm how many of the 660 projects in the previous pipeline will be retained in this pipeline? Can he advise which major projects are being abandoned and some insight into his reasoning for doing so? Madam Deputy Speaker, translating a pipeline into reality requires a labour force of sufficient size and with a range of skills, for example in construction, project management and engineering. And again in the 24 analysis by the Construction Industry Training Board indicated that that project pipeline would create labour pressures in many of these skills areas. Since coming to office, this Labour government has increased national insurance and is proposing new regulations on employment, both of which will disproportionately affect the construction sector. Does the Chief Secretary have any concerns about the impact of these changes on the availability of labour? And can he advise what assessment he has made of skills pinch points and what steps the government is taking to alleviate them? Fulfilling these plans will require investment by both taxpayers and private capital. Can the Chief Secretary advise the House if there's been any significant change in the mix of private and public investment within discrete sectors or overall compared to the last pipeline analysis in 2024? Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, the government created the National Wealth Fund. It said it was the centre of the government's principal investor, a critical part of the government's growth strategy and infrastructure. He gave it £7 billion, but has made no mention of it today. Why is there no mention of the National Wealth Fund? We are moving through an era with a rapidly accelerating pace of change, where the period from innovation to obsolescence of technology can be vanishingly short. The risk that public investment in new technology solutions will become redundant is increasing. Whilst being forward-looking, the government should also be careful to nurture existing technologies and new but proven technologies. So can the Chief Secretary advise what is the priorities of the government for technology choices in the energy sector? And what actions will he take to protect taxpayers from technology redundancy risk? Madam Deputy Speaker, the Pension Schemes Bill introduced by this government includes a reserve power for the government to mandate the investments of pension schemes. Can the Chief Secretary advise whether he has had any discussions or had the Treasury do any analysis about the use of mandation powers to provide financing for capital investments he is announcing today? Also, can the Chief Secretary advise if the projects today have been assessed on the revised Green Book rules? If not, will they at some point be reassessed on the revised basis? And what assurance can he provide that these projects will be value for money to taxpayers? As this government has stated, and which we acknowledge, when pressures on public expenditure increase, it can frequently be capital expenditure which suffers. I would like to ask the Chief Secretary if he can advise what actions he is willing to take, if finances are tight, to protect the budgets for the projects he has announced today. Madam Deputy Speaker, investment in infrastructure benefits from a stable economic background, a clear set of priorities, efficient delivery, optimum returns for taxpayers and investors. Madam Deputy Speaker, I miss the Chief Secretary and his old guys as chairman of the Business Select Committee. Then there was less of the rhetoric, less of the partisanship. These big decisions need open communication and critical analysis if we are to improve value for money and get projects delivered on time and on budget. And in those endeavours, the Chief Secretary will always have our support.